right, let's go ahead and call Ripon City Council special or closed session meeting to order, regular meeting to order. We got to go in closed session. Time for public comment. I believe, Lisa, you have some for us.
Yes, Mr. Vice Mayor. We received 2 public comments and I will read them into the record. The first is from Katie Nielsen at 1166 Groon Court. Mr. Mayor and Ripon City Council members, my name is Katie Nielsen and I am a resident of Ripon. I am writing this public comment to notify you of a concern I have with the safety of Ripon citizens and our overall community. As you are aware, the Ripon Consolidated Fire District currently generates enough funds to staff only 1 station. As our city continues to grow in both residents and businesses, I believe this to be undesirable and unsafe. I am also a registered nurse, and as such, I recognize the importance of response times when an emergency occurs and emergency medical services, EMS, is activated. Having 1 staff station leaves a city with significant limited resources, especially if there are multiple EMS calls. I'm requesting the City of Ripon place a sales tax measure on the November 2020 ballot to increase fire and safety services.
Public comment and close. So I guess technically we're open yet. We haven't done it. She's reading public comment, so it is open.
Correct. This is the public comment on closed session items.
Correct.
The second public comment that I received is from a Dr. Sherry Coburn, SOS chairperson, 844 John Camps Way. Dear Mayor Parks and the Ripon City Council members, on behalf of the staff our station and sustain our services for Ripon Ambulance and Fire SOS Committee, we are asking the Ripon City Council to add a 1% sales tax, 50% of which would go to the city and the other 50% to the Ripon Consolidated Fire District for this November 2020 ballot. The Ripon Consolidated Fire District, RCFD, has experienced a 34% increase in calls over the past several years, topping nearly at 2,000 calls annually in 2018 and 1,853 calls in 2019. With continued city growth, RCFD struggles to sustain ambulance services and Ripon Fire Station number 3 remains unstaffed. The SOS committee has been working hard since November, collecting data from community members, holding a town hall meeting, distributing social media campaigns, and the data clearly shows City of Ripon citizens favor and equitable sales tax increase than increased property taxes. With a recent social media campaign petition, we were able to gather over 250 signatures within 24 hours supporting a 1% sales tax initiative to support Ripon Consolidated Fire District. Sales taxes have been identified as an equitable mechanism for supporting fire departments. This is evidenced by recent sales tax initiatives in neighboring communities of Oakdale, Parlier, and others. Cities up and down the 99 corridor have assessed similar taxes to support safety. We met with the City of Ripon city manager this past month, and he shared the city was in no position to place such measure on the ballot. Yet with the economic COVID-19 downturn and the impact of city revenues, how can the City of Ripon not be in a position to? He recommended we float a parcel tax. 2 past parcel measures have been unsuccessful in Ripon. Even the League of Cities has shared parcel taxes are not the mechanism to support fire districts with only a 24% pass rate. In meeting with each council member, 2 of the 5 shared they have witnessed the inability of the fire department to respond to calls because they were on other calls. The City of Ripon benefits from having a strong fire department through insurance rates and the ability to serve the community with timely EMS response. It is time for the City of Ripon to support our Ripon Consolidated Fire District. The Ripon Consolidated firefighters are always there for us. It is time for us to support them. I ask that you move forward in placing a 1% sales tax on the November 2020 ballot to support safety measures. 50% of that revenue would go to Ripon Consolidated Fire District and the rest of the City of Ripon, the rest to the City of Ripon for safety measures. Let the citizens of this community make the decision of the measure. Thank you for your consideration on this matter. That is all we received.
That's all. And since there's no public in here today, we'll go into closed session, I suppose.
I now call the Ripon City Council meeting to order. We have a readout of closed session.
So during closed session, staff provided an update to council and direction was given. There's no reportable action at this time.
Okay, perfect. We will move back into open session now. So let's go ahead and stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Dean, would you lead us? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You'll bow your heads with me. Our Father, we thank you that we get to meet here again. Lord, we thank you for the continued protection that you've given us, and may you continue to help good decisions to be made here. Lord, may at all times, may the best interest of the community and the people of that community be on the minds and a part of the decisions. Thank you for Ripon. Thank you for the process here. And thank you for this time. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. So, Lisa, roll call, please.
Councilmember Leo Zuber.
Here.
Mike Restuccia.
Present.
Dean Euchre.
Here.
Vice Mayor Daniel DeGraff.
Here.
Mayor Jake Park.
Here. We will now move on to public discussion. Lisa?
No comments were received.
No comments were received, okay. So before we proceed, though, I would like to make some comments regarding some of the actions that the council has made and just some of the feedback that I've seen coming on Facebook. So and I know a lot of members of our community are wanting us to move quickly to reopen, the town and to open up playgrounds, to have to really just be open as we were before this whole pandemic hit. So for the city council and for the city in general, so we are moving as fast as we possibly can with a lot of these things. I know it's not to the speed that some of the city members would like. I don't even think it's to the speed that the council would like. I think we would like to move, and open up as fast as we possibly can. However, there are state regulations and county regulations that are really outside of our control in terms of our ability to open up. And we deal with a lot of this stuff. When it comes to water regulations, when it comes to affordable housing, there are state mandates that we have to abide by, that are really outside of our hands and they're things that we have to go by. So once again, it doesn't mean that we necessarily like those policies, but we are required to abide by them. And this is really no different. It just falls under a different section of the law. It falls under the public health section. So last week, the Ripon City Council, voted unanimously to put in place an enforcement mechanism that was based off of education first, and then a small monetary fine for businesses that were obeying the CDC rules. This allowed businesses to open up and allowed them to open back up their doors and allow them to start, regaining their livelihood. And this, in my estimation, was something that was valid and is something that we should have done. So, I mean, I get the public's frustration that we should have, that we should be doing more. And in a lot of cases, I wish we were doing more. But we are doing the best we possibly can right now, and we are moving as fast as we possibly can. And so I know that had been floating out there on Facebook and some of these other forums, and I just wanted to address that. And I'll actually open it up to any other members of the council who would like to make comments on this as well. So, you have a lot to say later? All right. Okay, so with that, we will go ahead and close public discussion, and we'll move on to approval of the minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Right, we're going back to the electronic.
Oh, we're
Oops,
actually
sorry,
doing this
my
now?
my
Oh, we're
apologies.
doing
I
it.
accidentally hit the mover.
Hold on a second.
Oh,
Who hasn't voted?
It's Leo. So. Okay, we will now move on to approval of the agenda.
this is where we pull items, right?
Yep.
I'd like to pull item 1.4D.
That's an improvement. That's way down the line.
Last time I didn't pull any.
Shocked us all. Yeah. Anything else?
Oh, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Where's the,
I'm waiting for the vote button to come up.
Oh.
Oh, that's okay. Okay. Moving on to the consent.
5-0 vote. Do we need to announce the vote since people aren't seeing it?
You can see it?
Okay.
Yeah. So the consent calendar as amended?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar as amended.
Second.
Motion, we have a second. Councilman Zuber?
Actually, I think I got my answer, but I just want, the reason I wanted to pull it is, as I read the staff report, if somebody used a credit card, they were going to pay more for a ticket than a person who didn't because of that 5% assessment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I had asked Kevin, and this Elizabeth sent me an email that I got about 5 minutes ago. And apparently what's going to happen is the ticket price will stay the same. The 5% is being taken out of that. So the city would get 95% of the ticket price, which I'm fine with, because had it been that they were going to raise the price, I was going to want to look at the city figuring out how to cover that, because we've got more money than we know what to do with to support transit. And to make a customer pay more because they're using a credit card, I had a problem with, but apparently it's going to be reversed, so we're okay. Is that correct?
That's right. And we had it backwards in the staff report, so appreciate the question and Elizabeth getting that clarification.
With that, I'll move to approve item 1.4D.
Second.
We've got a mover, we've got a second.
Whoops,
Sorry, Leo.
wait a minute.
I hit moved. I'm sorry.
It's twice now, Leo's. Usurped.
Relax a little bit.
They are. You kids will catch up someday.
Come on, you guys.
All right. All right. Moving on to the public hearings, 2A.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, fellow council members. Hey, Dan, is there a way you can connect me up? Apparently not. Staff position 1. Either way, it's in the staff reports. They can just look at the pictures in the staff report. That's fine. So this is an item regarding amendments, possible amendments to our fencing ordinance that we have in place. As you all know, for some time, the city we have struggled with fencing requirements and standards throughout the community, especially when it does come to corner lots, placement of fences in side yards facing adjacent streets. Of particular frustration to residents within our community is the varying number of fence setbacks for corner lots. Depending on when the lot was created and where it is located, there is a potential of 24 different corner side yard fence setbacks within the city of Ripon. With so many fence setbacks, it's difficult for homeowners and even fencing contractors to decipher where the appropriate fence setbacks would be, especially since building permits aren't required for fencing. So we don't have the opportunity to speak with them when they come into City Hall to explain where the fencing should be located. So over the years, the city councils have kind of refined the fencing standards in the city of Ripon to not only deal with safety issues, such as visual sight distances for cars and pedestrians, but also from an aesthetic perspective for our community. Some of the criteria that went into these decisions, I think, over the past, with the past councils is, having fencing that is set back further from the sidewalks, as you can see in the pictures here in the staff report and up on the screen. Gives you a more open feel to the community. Here's a street that has the parkway between the curb and the sidewalk, so there's a 10-foot green space. You have sidewalk, and then at the back of sidewalk, the fencing is set back from that point. That's kind of a large setback, nice wide open feeling for the community. Here's the same example of a nice wide side yard fence setback, but this is where you have attached sidewalk. Kind of moving on to the next point here is landscaping. When you get into fence setbacks with landscaping, a nice wide setback for fencing provides for an area for landscaping with trees, shrubs, easy to maintain and to grow stuff in those areas, as opposed to having a small setback or no setbacks in some cases in other communities where you don't have a whole lot of opportunity for landscaping. A lot of times that ends up just turning into dirt and not being maintained very well. When fencing is put up, brand new fencing looks kind of pretty nice, but over time, if not maintained properly or sealed, it starts looking kind of in disrepair. So having them closer to the sidewalk and not having them buffered with landscaping and such just gives our community a different feel. The aesthetic value and stuff is just not there. So, well, certainly these are not all the decisions or a comprehensive list that went into the standards that are in place today. It does provide just a little perspective of the current standards and why we have them. The city's most current regulations call for a 20-foot fence setback on corner lots. This 20-foot setback is measured from the property line, which in many cases, like I said earlier, is different from neighborhood to neighborhood. So you can have one corner lot on one side of the street having a different setback than a corner lot on the other side of the street. And this again makes it very difficult to ascertain exactly where these fences can be placed, especially when they're watching a neighbor put a fence up that could be a different setback than theirs. Additionally, the city's current regulation allows for fences on corner lots to encroach an additional 5 feet into that 20-foot area, so they can be 15 feet from the property line if they're protecting doors and windows from the adjacent street. So staff did take some time to compile a master list for corner lots within the city of Ripon to analyze if there might be some common ground that can be struck, while also keeping in mind the reasons why the fencing standards are the way they are. With that being said, there are currently about 842 corner lots within the city of Ripon. And of those 842 lots, there are currently 24 different setbacks in different neighborhoods for the subdivisions and the fence setbacks. So we explored standardizing side yard fencing setbacks for corner lots to a 15-foot setback, which we would want to measure just from the back of sidewalk, regardless of where the property line is. Of the existing 842 lots, there's 118 lots that currently have the ability to put a fence closer than that 15 feet. So in the old part of Ripon, the old areas of town, Ripon district, over here off of Main Street, a lot of the setbacks in those neighborhoods are 10 feet. So there's 118 lots in those areas that have an ability to put a fence possibly at a 10-foot setback and having to comply with the 15-foot setback. Of those 118 corner lots in the older parts, when we did the windshield survey, only 20 of those corner lots actually legally had fences constructed within the proposed setback. So they had fences that were closer than 15 feet to the back of sidewalk, but they were complying with the rules and regulations of the 10-foot setback that they have to comply with. So those are legal fences that were constructed. The remaining 98 corner lots in that, in the older area of town, they either didn't have, they either had fencing that was well behind the new 15-foot setback that we would like to propose. They either had that, they either had no fencing at all. Some of the areas that don't have any fencing at all, or they had fencing that was not compliant. So even if they were measured at the 10-foot setback as they were required to, some of them are closer to the sidewalk than that already. As such, staff believes that a standardized fence setback for corner lots of 15 feet from the back of the sidewalk would be sufficient to maintain, like I said, the spirit of the past decisions of the that were contemplated in composing the current standards. The current 20 lots in the old part of town that are compliant would have fences that would be grandfathered in, so they would be legal non-compliant fences at that point. So in older areas of town where the setbacks might be less than 15 feet, so sometimes a house could be built at that 10-foot setback, we would allow the fences to be constructed no closer than what the houses would be. So if a house could be at a 10-foot setback, so could the fence, but the fence at no time could be any closer to the sidewalk from that point. Additionally, these side yard fence setbacks for corner lots would not apply to any residential lot which is zoned R1E, which is our larger lots, anywhere from 3/8 to 5/8 of an acre in size. Those lots already have like a 40-foot side yard setback, so we wouldn't want fencing coming all the way out to within 15 feet in those areas. And also the R1R, which is the single family residential rural lots, those are 2-acre minimum sizes. We don't currently have any of those lots in town, but those are lots that are planned for the edges of the community that could be like ranchettes and such, and those have different requirements for fencing anyways. Sometimes those could have horses and such, so they might be able to have fencing, different fencing around their properties to begin with. We did take this to the Planning Commission on April 20th. We did hold a public hearing to consider the amendments and to provide the opportunity for the public to comment on the proposed amendments, and no one from the public came forth at that time. And the Planning Commission did take an action with a 5-0 vote to recommend that the City Council approve the proposed amendments in front of you this evening. That pretty much concludes the staff report. There is several attachments here. We have the proposed ordinance in there, what it would look like. The old ordinance, what it was. We have a red line version, which is quite honestly a lot of red on it, sometimes a little difficult to read. And also we have a fencing brochure that was put together to assist the public in knowing where to locate their fence if this amendment is approved, which was also in your packet. And also the public hearing notice. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Mayor. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right.
Any questions from the council?
The only comment I would make is I try to read through all that red stuff and right to the flyer you put in there. I mean, that it says it all to me. That's easy to follow for me.
Okay.
Too much wording in the rest of it. I know you have to do it.
Councilman Zuber?
The question I would have, I didn't see it anywhere. What happens to the fences that are not legal now? In other words, if this thing is passed and goes in, I think you said there are 10 or 24? I don't remember there were some numbers.
So there's 20 fences in the older area of town that are closer to what would be the new ordinance. So they're closer than the 15 feet, but they are legal. They were legal when they were put up.
Okay.
So
Will they still be legal?
It would be grandfathered in as legal.
Okay. And suppose one of those grandfathered legal fences, the person decides to replace it. What standard do they have to live by?
They would have to push back to the 15-foot.
All right, so if you were legal when you built it, you can keep it. But if you replace it, it's got to be under the new standard.
Correct.
Does that need to be written anywhere, or do we just know that?
That is kind of implicitly applied in the ordinance at the 15-foot. We do talk about being grandfathered in for some of the other units that were closer the time But staff can review that and add some language in there if it's not clear enough on that.
Knowing some of the constituents in this community, I'd rather have it written down so that, mainly so that staff's protected, so that they don't do something and they get into a big argument about it. I have no problem with the ordinance. I think it does a really good job of addressing a problem. But that one thing, I think, like I said, for the staff, it ought to be noted what's going to happen to the, just my suggestion.
I think that's a good question, because I saw some of this, and my thought was that if some fence rotted out, they'd be able to just replace the rotted out fence. What you're saying is they can, but they have to now meet the new setbacks, right?
Well, I tell you, the way I was taught when I took over this position was if people had fences that were not legal, they could repair them. But if they were going to replace the entire fence, they needed to move it back to where it's supposed to be. So what you end up with there is people replacing a fence board or two here and there just because it's rotted out and they don't necessarily.
As far as I'm concerned, if that's what they want to do, that's fine.
Yeah.
Repair is one thing, but if they come in there and it's gone today and Joe Blow Fence Builder is putting in a brand new fence, new posts, new rails, new everything, then I think it ought to be done right.
And if we're only talking about 20 houses, I guess my opinion is let them replace it where it's at. But
Yeah, but part of the problem is we are here now because those 20 are an example to the next 20 and say, if he can do it, why can't I?
I get that, but if you bought a house and you have 20-year-old, 30-year-old trees in your yard that are 5 feet behind your existing fence, and someone tells you, hey, I want to rebuild my fence, and now you got to cut down your tree because that's where your fence can go, I'm not going to be very happy. No, I'm going to build it right back where I had it before, and you can come and take it down if you want. Yeah, leave one post up and then fix it next week. I mean, that's what they're going to do. They'll get around it.
Well,
So.
and that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, if that's
As long as you can argue that it's a rebuild or a fixer-upper rather than a replacement,
Right.
I'm good with that. I'm not agreeing.
well, just
One
make it
plank
both.
at a time.
Make it both clear. Then I guess if
Yeah,
you want to say
no.
if you're going to rebuild the whole thing, then it needs to meet these standards. If you're going to repair it, it can stay where it's at.
I just think it ought to be clear now so that somebody else in 5 years isn't
10,
stuck
20,
having this very same discussion.
Okay. All right, as this is a public discussion, we will open it up to members of the public for comments. Do we have any comments? Seeing none, we will close the public discussion and we will bring it back to the council. So how does the council want to move on this?
I miss having people in the audience.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
I'll make a second.
We have a motion and we have a second.
So the motion is to adopt it with that one.
Right. Right. So we will now move on to the first reading and introduction of the fencing and screening.
If I'm wrong, Katie, move to waive the first reading and adopt the ordinance.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. With the provisions previously outlined under 2A. Yeah.
Well, why don't you go ahead and read it then? No, I'm kidding.
All right, 3B, street excavations and encroachments.
I could handle this one, Mr. Mayor. For the last couple of years, the engineering department has added a condition on encroachment permits to remove USA markings at the end of a project. A lot of times we'll have contractors coming in who are doing some underground work on utilities or concrete repair, and they're required to call in a USA alert for underground utilities. And with that, that's when you see the spray painting on the sidewalks. A lot of times those markings are removed by the contractor, but not all the time. And it really becomes a burden on the engineering department to go down and track them down and get them back out there to remove those markings. What's being proposed by staff is to require a deposit fee. So when they come in for their encroachment permit, they would also pay a deposit, probably on the order of $500. And once the USA markings have been removed, they would get that deposit back. So that's what's in front of you tonight with the changes to the city's municipal code. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the council?
I have one.
Councilman Zuber.
What's in the staff report, the fee is not mentioned. It's just said that it will be on the fee schedule. It also says that any change in the fee will have to be done by the council. So when the fee is initially established, will it come here so that we know what it is?
Yeah, one of the things that we did with the municipal code, we actually took out from the code the fee for stormwater and also the survey monuments. If you recall, those were state mandated requirements that we've incorporated as part of our municipal code. But now that we live in those, we want to make sure we're getting reimbursed for our time. So staff thought it'd be easier to bring that all back by resolution to approve those fees as needed. So we'll bring back a resolution that not only includes the USA deposit, but also the other fees too that were removed from the municipal code.
Okay.
Councilmember
And the
Stucci.
question I have, I'm assuming the deposit fee would be what it would cost us if we had to, okay.
That's right.
So it doesn't cost us anything, we have to go remove it.
That's right. Yeah, and that's where it's nice to have a little flexibility. You know, you start doing this for a little bit, you realize you missed the mark a little bit and have to make an adjustment. So we can do this by resolution.
That's good. Thank you.
Vice Mayor DeGraff.
I know, there's two questions. One, is this for both the, like when the contractor goes and marks it out for USA to come and for the agencies to come mark their utilities, plus the utility markings that the agencies are making when PG&E comes out and marks their lines? We're talking both the marking for them to come find the area that you put on the street, plus the ones on the sidewalk or wherever else they go. We're talking all the markings, basically.
Yeah. Normally we would tie it to a project. So, you know, whatever project they're all related to, we would put that all on whoever's applying for the encroachment permit to take care of that.
Okay, and the second question, is there any way we can require them to use like the chalk type upside down paint instead of the permanent paint upside down paint? I know they have versions that are like washable, they only last so long, they're a lot easier to get off than, but I don't know if you can require them to do that or not, or at least recommend to them that they use.
It's definitely in their best interest. I think the problem is a lot of the agencies may have different type of paint, but we certainly could put it in there.
Encourage them at least to try and use chalk base so it washes away the rain.
Right. Yeah, we could add that.
Okay, so with that, Councilman Zuber.
I'd just like to say I'm very happy to see this, because this has been something that has bugged me for a long time. There was a mark on that roundabout down there. It's probably still there from when they put in the sprinkler system. And
drive over it when you go back.
you can, it's up on the curb up by the thing. I mean,
You can still drive.
I understand why you have to do it, but I also think the people ought to clean up after themselves when it's over with so that we don't have to put up with it. So
Well, I'm
thank you.
glad it's in place too, because I don't know how many times I heard about Leo talk about one that was downtown Main Street for a while.
Yeah, hopefully we never have to hear about it. Yeah. All right, so 3B, so how does?
I'll
council
move to
wanna-
adopt, this one, we got to waive the first read. Yeah, waive the first reading and adopt the ordinance.
Second,
We have a mover and we have a second.
I'll wait my turn, Leo.
No, they don't. They're very on.
You kids are slow.
All right, 3C, purchasing system.
Me, Mr. Mayor. So this ordinance is for second reading and adoption, and it was brought for first reading at the April meeting. This is for chapter 3.20, the purchasing systems of the municipal code. There were no changes from the first to the second reading.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we waive the second reading and adopt the ordinance.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. We've got a second. I was trying to let you go on that one.
Hey, I was waiting for old youngster.
All right, moving on. Discussion item 4A. Joint exercise powers agreement with SSJID and City of Escalon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you may recall, the state has required all the groundwater basins in the state of California to establish a groundwater sustainability agency to achieve groundwater sustainability going forward. So in doing that, the city of Ripon has joined GSA with City of Escalon and the South San Joaquin Irrigation District, and that GSA was formed through a memorandum of agreement. It's been operating fine. We've had a good relationship with everyone, and at this point in time, staff has been talking with the other parties to enter into a joint powers agreement. So this does have some benefits that are included in the staff report. I'll point out two of them. It does allow us to separately account for finances. Right now, everything is kind of being run through the SSJID accounting system. So this would allow the JPA to have their own checking accounts, insurance considerations, audits, etc. The other thing it does, it has an isolation of risks associated with the actions carried out by the GSA as a separate legal entity. So that's what would have insurance, have the liability with any actions related to groundwater sustainability. A couple of the things I would just point out, I think a lot of what's in here is how we've been operating. It would continue to be a 5-member board. It would have 3 representatives from SSJID, a representative of the city of Ripon, and 1 of city of Escalon. There are certain items that do require, most items require a majority, but there are certain items of approval that requires a supermajority and the concurrence from all parties involved. Those are related to the levying of taxes, approval of major projects, adoption of rules, regulations, and policies, approval of the groundwater sustainability plan. That will be a big milestone in this process. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Open it up to the council. Does the council have any questions?
Well, I have a
Councilmember
question. So
Stusha.
this basically just changing the entity makeup, basically? Just operating under different, I'm gonna say corporation or whatever. What was the, I mean, I understand it, but why did we decided to do that now? Do you know?
You know, it was really just to make it its own entity. A lot of it was the liability reasons, but I think that was one part of it, but it also allowed them to, you know, there's gonna be projects that come out of the GSP, and it gave you one other way to do some of the larger projects, you know, as an entity rather than everyone doing them separately.
Okay, I got it, yeah. I mean, there's definitely a benefit to it.
So the previous setup was to get to the point to where we had the plan submitted and completed. Now the plan's submitted, and you're in the phase where we're actually doing monitoring, we're actually building projects. And so this is kind of a different phase and makes it more formal this way.
I see. Good. Always looks better that way anyway.
All right, so.
Do you need an approval?
Yep.
I'll make a motion, we approve the approval of the joint exercise of powers agreement creating the South Irrigation Groundwater Sustainability Agency.
I'll second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Okay. Moving on, item 4B, 2020-2021 budget.
How you did it, I don't know, but go ahead.
That's what we're going to talk about. So number one, what I did with this budget is I really wanted to focus on some of the fiscal impacts that we're seeing or starting to see or expecting to see from the COVID situation, along with some discussion of how to mitigate those impacts. First of all, obviously COVID is a difficult time. The real focus of staff and the city has been to focus on serving the community. And obviously the city of Ripon has to follow the stay-at-home orders from the state and the county like everyone else. Currently, City Hall is closed to the public. Recreation programs are on hold. Rentals are also on hold. Limited recycling center operations. Playground equipment is closed as is required by the county's order. And then senior center closed except for serving meals. a lot of the stuff we've talked about before, that the city doesn't have an ability to go in and change the orders. We can make them more stringent, but we can't change those orders. Our role is a role of education and enforcement. During this time, we have the same requirements as everyone else, is to provide the essential functions of the city. Early on, as the orders were coming through, I met with all the department heads, talking about what are those essential functions and what does this mean for our employees, and how do we address this. For us, we are pretty lean. Ever since the recession, we have not hired back a lot of the positions that were laid off. It allowed us to really have most of our employees in essential functions. There have been 1 or 2 part-time employees that were reorganized because there was like recreation programs, for example, they're not happening. So we're able to move that individual to help out with public works and some of the other functions there. But no employees have been laid off. A couple of employees have worked at home at different points in time, and 2 part-time employees have been furloughed because there was just no work in non-essential functions. Obviously, the comment you made initially is very true. How do you do budgets during a pandemic? There's no baseline for us to go off of and look back and be able to make projections. It's obvious that we'll experience immediate and long-lasting effects of this. Initially, the effects are with our leases, our rentals, and our recreation programs, which do provide revenue to our general fund. But the longer-term effects are the revenues generated from the sales tax and property tax. So just with the understanding that the April is really the first full month of the sales that we will see the sales tax impact, we won't actually see that data from the state until September, likely September, maybe even October. Property taxes is still unclear what the impacts will be with those. Talking to the county, they would, if there are going to be any impacts, it would not be seen until the 21-22 fiscal year. During the Great Recession, which started in 2008, the city learned a lot from that, and it was how to manage these type of economic downturns. I put on this list here, I'm not going to go through all these items specifically, but these are the type of things that are in the toolbox that the council could be looking at, depending on the severity of the revenue impact to the city. Normally you kind of start at the top, and as you work your way down, those begin to get to be more difficult decisions. But again, it really depends on the severity of the financial impact. So with that, I'm recommending that the council consider with the 2021 budget that we approve an interim budget to start the fiscal year and likely be based off of what we're seeing right now in 1920, but direct staff to bring something back no later than January 21, when I'll be able to better project at that time what are the real fiscal impacts of that. And then once we do it, we can start talking about how do you mitigate those impacts. Not only did we learn how to manage an economic downturn when we went through the Great Recession, but we also learned how to prepare for those type of economic downturns. And some of the stuff we've done is, one of the ones is we still have a surplus from 18-19 that has not been allocated yet. So that's something we can talk about at the end of this calendar year. We can also talk about using the general fund mitigation to whether we transfer that. Right now, there's a policy that if there's no downturn in the economy and no deficit in the general fund, that interest goes into the general mitigation fund. At times when there is a deficit, it's up to the council if you want to keep that in the general fund. So that's something we can also talk about at the end of the year. And then lastly, the contingency funds that have been set up, and if we want to begin using those to weather this economic downturn.
What's the mitigation fund? What do you mean when you say that?
That's the developer fees we get to mitigate development.
Oh, okay.
The other approach to this is suspend general fund capital purchases and other non-essential purchases until we get a chance to really see what the economic impacts of COVID is. I mentioned earlier the contingency funds, and again, this is really came out of learning from the Great Recession and how to protect the city. Obviously, there's also reserve funds that we had set up. When we went through the Great Recession, there was not an interest to use those funds to mitigate any sort of economic downturn, and that was the reason the contingency funds were set up, is to get through difficult periods. So these were the largest liabilities that the city has, and they were to cover a 3-year period. Obviously, there's some discretion by the council of how you want to use these, but that was the intent, or at least how we developed the fund balances. So these were set up for sick leave buyouts, from the PERS liability that we have and PERS payments, healthcare, our liability insurance, our self-insured retention amount, and then obviously for disasters, which COVID and this type of pandemic would certainly follow under that category.
And when you say fund balance, that is the current balance. Each one of those.
Yes. Yes.
Kevin, you know what would be helpful? I'm not asking you to do it now, but what would be helpful is like, I'm looking at this now thinking, what is the sick leave? What is 3 years? Is it 500,000? So are we really short of what we're asking for what our reserve policy is, or is there 300,000 and now we're actually 40?
Yeah, so I normally do that this time of the year to talk about where the metrics of those are at. I could bring that back next time.
Yeah, I'm just saying that it would be helpful for me to know what.
The one that is short right now is the CalPERS.
And I got to tell you, it's going to get shorter.
Right. But I apologize. I normally do that at this time.
That's okay. No problem.
I normally do it when there's money available and talk about transferring money. So, but I could certainly provide that.
Okay, thanks.
That input. So this is the 2019-20 general fund budget. This is through March. So obviously you can see pre-COVID, we had a very strong economy, and we were on track to see a general fund surplus on the order of $1 million, very similar to what we've seen the last couple of years. And I would just remind you, that's before any of the transfers for capital replacement or such, just truly an operational surplus. That is really going to allow us to, at least for this fiscal year, absorb the revenue hits from COVID. What I did on this side, this goes back to really the start of the Great Recession and brings us up to current. I'm not going to go through obviously all these numbers, but I think it's important to kind of see the trends that have happened with revenue and expenses over the time. You can see in fiscal year 2008-9 at the very far left of the screen, this is when the Great Recession was happening. You can see the deficit that happened then, but you could also see how long it took to cut the expenses. It took about 3 years to do that, and then from there you can see both the revenue going up and the expenses going up over a period of time. One of the things I've done on this figure, and I think this was Councilmember Restuccia's request, I put everything in 2020 dollars. So the next couple of slides you've seen, everything is in current dollar figures. You know what, one last thing I want to point out. If you look at the end of the far right side of that slide, I'm projecting a reduction in revenue on the order of about $850,000, $900,000 between last fiscal year, 2018-19, and what we'll end up with in 19-20, even after the strong start that we had to the fiscal year. Same thing, this is all in 2020 dollars, but this is the major general fund revenue accounts we have, and I apologize, I know it's hard to see, but on the far left, that's the blue one there is sales tax, the red next to that is property tax, green is motor vehicle in lieu, recreation is the orange smaller line on there, and then that blue line is building development fees. But you could really, and I have another slide that shows it too, but you could really see that the variable revenue source that we have is in the sales tax, which is largely related to fuel sales. And then these numbers are not going to add up to what I just told you, because some of the revenue that we're projecting for this 2019-20 fiscal year is actually going up. Property taxes, for example, motor vehicle in lieu, those are going up. but sales tax reduction in between last year and this current fiscal year is about $790,000. And then what we're seeing in recreation programs that are projecting to be reduced by $240,000, and then building development fees being reduced by $150,000.
So this is your estimate of how 2019, 2020 is going to end?
Yes.
Okay.
And the sales tax is down, I would say primarily because not only the gas tax is down, but the less driving, so there's less gallons being,
That's exactly right.
yeah.
And they're related, because there's no supply right now. I'm sorry, no demand.
No
and we have
demand.
a lot of supply.
And the number of miles driven is less than the gas prices are down, so it's a double whammy.
It's a double whammy. Exactly.
I'm surprised they're that close.
Diesel's not down though much.
Well, we want that many diesel cars out there.
Trucks.
So this is what we're just talking about, the sale of fuel. When I ran the most recent numbers for 2019, fuel sales make up about 45% of our sales tax. Previous years, this goes back a couple of years, but it used to be on the order of 60%. So it's a good thing. So it tells you the other sectors of sales tax are growing, specifically commercial and manufacturing and restaurants. Those are all taking up a bigger part of the revenue source. So it has resulted in the fuel sales being 45%.
One more than the other or all equally?
It's a good question. I don't have that answer right
Okay.
now.
I'm just curious.
My gut feels
One more than the other for what's making up the difference in the pie here? as
Commercial
to-
and manufacturing.
Yeah.
Is
I
one.
think they grew, which may be.
Yeah, and I
Right,
think
but it's-
specifically commercial. You know,
Right,
having Bow
okay.
Country here has certainly helped. Silverado, there's a lot of large commercial, Betterbilt Trust. That's not commercial. The other thing I did on here, and it's kind of hard to see, but over the price of fuel, and this is the average of the 3 different types of unleaded gasoline. But I put on red what our sales tax numbers were each of those years. So you can kind of see the fluctuations in fuel is showing the fluctuations also with our sales tax. It's kind of hard to see.
So the red line is
Yeah.
tax from gas?
Yeah, or no, total sales tax. Total sales tax.
So the red line is total and the blue line.
The blue line is the
price of gas.
average price of fuel.
Oh,
Okay.
thank
To
you.
the left side.
Okay,
of,
I didn't
sorry,
get that, thanks.
the left side of the graph. And
Okay.
then the
I got
on the
you.
right side of the graph, that is total sales tax, and that's the red line. We're just trying to show that, you know, as we're very dependent on the price of fuel.
Look how it just drops off. Boom.
Yeah.
Now that I'm not driving a lot, it goes down.
This graph shows expenses. Again, everything in here is 2020 dollars, but employee wages is the largest percent of the general fund expenses. I thought one of the interesting things when you put everything in 2020 dollars that you could see is in 2008-9, wages were over $6 million. You know, right now we're getting close to $5 million. So we haven't added, like I said before, when we talked about staffing, we haven't added back, you know, we laid off 18 employees. I think we've added back 2 employees since then. We really have been focusing on being more efficient with our time. We purchased capital items as investments to make employees more efficient, but also it was a reduction in services to the community. An example is like a PAL program. You know, we used to have a PAL program that we would run, and that was with our police officers. That program never came back after the recession. So,
And to me, putting it in today's dollars is really more meaningful for me than if I were, because there's no comparison if you
Right.
show those dollars.
no, it was a really good point. Yeah, I agree. The other. The other items I show on here is of our large expenses, healthcare, that's the red line. And you can see that's been managed fairly closely over the years. A lot of work has been, I'd give Bohannon's a lot of credit for their advice over the years to do that. Because I know a lot of cities would not look like that. PERS retirement is the green line on there. And then operating expenses is that larger blue line on there. The budget would also include the general fund support that goes out to other organizations. This is very consistent with what we've had the last many years. So I won't go into line by line, but I would also, unless council had a different desire, but I would include that in the proposed 2020, the interim budget for next fiscal year at this time.
Why do you have 4th of July on their staffing?
Just in case.
Yeah, we've been budgeting it just in case the chamber was gonna run it or somebody was gonna take it over. I think earlier in the fiscal year, council had requested a summary of the debt that the city has right now. Later on the agenda, when we get to the redevelopment agenda, we're going to be talking about the redevelopment debt specifically. And those are our largest debt sources, and we're going to talk about refinancing those. But the other ones that we have is a sewer bond that was done in 2011 that matures in 2025. We have a water bond that was done in 2006 and that matures in 2032, and another water bond that matures in 2027. So you can see it on there, the initial bond amounts, what our current annual payments are for each of those amounts, and then the interest rates. With that, this is the slide I showed earlier. If there's any adjustments that the council would like to make to that, I'll take that direction. Otherwise, what I'll do at the June meeting is bring back an interim budget along these same guidelines for the council. And then with also the understanding, I'll provide regular updates on the budget. And then at the end of this year, start talking about what are the fiscal impacts from this and how do you mitigate those.
I have a question. I know it's dumb. What's NLT?
Oh, sorry, no later than.
Oh. It's like BTW?
Sometimes when I write these, I do that and I forget to go back and change them.
All right, opening it up to the council. Anybody have any comments?
I think there's so many unknowns.
Yeah.
This might, like Mike said, might sound stupid, but when we pick, can you go back one screen? Okay. Is that the screen I wanted? Yeah. If you, okay, so do we actually make these as annual payments? Yep. At the very end of the year?
So we do them
Twice a year.
Twice a year.
Okay, I guess my question was gonna be, if we're paying them at the end of the year, if we started paying month to month to month to month, right after we paid the payment, would that help reduce this? No?
Oh,
It's just a question that, because we were ahead of the game, and you're paying in a
So
sense.
you're saying pay more than what we're required to pay?
Yeah.
Well,
what I heard was 186 annually, so we're paying 93,000 twice a year. He's saying if we pay it monthly, it will amortize faster.
That's one, yeah, because, I mean, it's just.
Paying off a little bit sooner.
Yeah, it's like any other debt.
We're about to have Marshall on the
I had a
call.
better
We could ask
idea.
Marshall that
I had a
question.
better idea. I
the
asked
first
Kevin.
question is whether we could even do that.
Yeah,
Well, that's the other
yeah,
question.
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
But in reality, the bottom three, it really doesn't matter how long it takes to pay them off because they're being paid with property taxes that we can't get anyway. So,
The
Yep.
redevelopment.
yeah, it's the water, sewer, and sewer that are money that comes to us from the ratepayers that we might want to think about. The other three, who cares?
Well, one of the things I talked to Kevin about or asked Kevin about was, rates today, based on what we'll see later on, you can get them down as 2.4%. When you take the balances of all these, I don't know what it comes out to, but there may be a big amount of savings to refinance those as well, but.
And we'll talk to Marshall.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah, and we're about to talk to Marshall a little bit about that with the
Yeah,
redevelopment. So that very well may apply with the water sewer. The sewer bond's about to be paid off in the next 5 years, but the water bonds, there may be something there to look at.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Okay.
Nope, seeing
Sounds like a
none.
good plan to me.
Yeah,
Because
I agree.
You're on it, Jeff.
we're sort of dancing on ice for a while.
Then nice. All right, so with that, we will move on to department head reports. Chief?
6 feet.
Well, Mr. Mayor, Honorable City Council, I just wanted to give a brief update on our police department COVID responses. To date, since March 19th, we've had 160 plus incidents or complaints regarding violations of the health order within our community. Since the action that was taken by the City Council last Monday, we've had 8 complaints this week. 5 of them were community-based and 3 of them were business-based. To address the business ones, we had one complaint that officers did respond and it was unverified, so no action was taken. We had a complaint that was general in nature with no specific violations. Officers did not respond to that complaint. And then we had one that there was a complaint that was validated and that business was provided with educational paperwork. So that's where we're at so far.
Can we know who those 3 businesses are?
He wants to know who they are.
The names of the business.
I really don't care, but.
Yeah.
No, me either.
If so, I could get with you after the meeting and let you know. Prior to the City Council's action on Monday, we had 11 complaints about businesses, and there was 2 businesses that were on step 2. We started at 0 on Monday, and so we have the 1 business that is on step 1. And again, no other complaints and no other businesses included in the enforcement and education process. We are fielding basis on questions on a daily basis from local businesses and other entities within our community, and trying to help them guide and make educated decisions on what action they want to take. I think that is all I have at this point, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Chief, so we have 2 businesses at step 1 then, right?
Currently only 1.
Okay, so currently we only have
Prior
one.
to last Monday, we had 2. Once the new education enforcement policy went in, everybody started at 0, and we currently only have 1
So
business.
we only have 1. Okay.
And that business received that educational information on actually Wednesday morning, and we've had no further complaints.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Chief. Yep. Ms. Zeidevart.
Yeah, just a really quick update. We do have a couple service station or gas station projects that are in the pipeline. They are scheduled for a July Planning Commission meeting. One is at the corner of Jacktone and Canal Boulevard, and the other one is at the corner of River Road and North Ripon. So hopefully by the July meeting, we'll be able to have public meetings here, because as will be, one of them is a public hearing. The other one is not going to be a 24-hour operation, so it is just a major site review application. So that's all I have.
Are they all going to be 24-hour and one's not?
Yeah, so the one on Jacktone and Canal is wanting to be a 24-hour operation. The one at North Ripon and River Road have indicated that they will close down at night, even the pumps.
Even the pumps?
Yeah.
Now, let's say they wanted to go through and revise that. Let's say they get 6 months into it and they realize this business model doesn't work.
They would have to come back in front of the Planning Commission for a conditional use permit application at that time. So it would be re-noticed out to the public and the neighboring properties over there that they were seeking to be a 24-hour business. So it would have to get additional approval.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Are they gas stations only? Are they gas stations quick stop?
Yeah, both of them are the gas stations with convenient markets in them. The one at North Ripon and River Road, well, both of them actually have a drive-through that they're proposing for food, some limited food service out of those, both of the operations there. So that's, yeah, both of those.
Car wash?
No, the one actually on Canal and Jacktone has a space that they're setting aside for a potential future car wash area. They're trying to get something in that's a little more upscale than the ones that we have seen at our current gas stations here. So they're working on that. They'll probably be following up. That would come through as a separate application and go before Planning Commission at a future date.
With sponges instead of plastic.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Zeidevart. Mr. Warner. Nothing to report. Councilman Zuber?
Have we started, I'm guessing the answer is yes, weed abatement, because I'm noticing lots are starting to get mowed and plowed. So
Yes,
is it
Liz.
us or is it the fire department?
No, Liz has been working on that already. She has got some compliance, and then also she's working with others who might not be as expedient as the other ones.
Okay. And what about water enforcement? Because I'm noticing, I mean, I get out in the morning once in a while, and I'm noticing there are people watering on the wrong day. Lots of people watering at the wrong time. Are we setting that aside for a while, or are we doing something?
No, we recently hired a new water conservation
Okay.
officer. So I've seen him around on weekends, and I've actually seen him in the evenings going around the community. So it just may be a little bit of a transition right now.
Okay. Then I'm noticing there's several piles of yard waste out in the street. How do we handle that?
So typically what happens
I
is.
mean, big piles of yard waste.
Yeah, typically what happens is Public Works, when they're doing garbage or green can pickup, will note it and tag the homeowner's door and have them come do a yard pickup.
Oh,
They
okay.
pay for that extra. If they don't call in a matter of time in a certain time frame, we can hit them up with code enforcement on those items.
I don't notice them staying a long time, but I'm just surprised because, usually this time of year, everybody knows you get it done by January, but I guess it's because people are home with nothing else to do. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah, we do have, and a lot of times people will set yard waste out and then they come in and schedule a pickup here, which is something that they pay for. Depends on how big the load is and stuff, so.
Thank you. That's it.
Councilmember Stusha?
I know, because my wife calls for that stuff all the time. So I want to just share a few things because I'm not sure the public's aware, maybe everybody on the council is not aware. And I did send a letter to the Board of Supervisors today. They requested, and they gave them some statistics. But let me just give you statistics so the public understands, rather than this is all taken from websites and places we send people to. San Joaquin County had 28 deaths so far from COVID-19 out of 762,000 people. That's 0.003767% death rate. The United States is a 0.024%. Worldwide, it's 0.003%. And the reason I bring that up is because, I want to compare that to there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 other incidents of death, hunger, smoking, alcohol, car accidents that far exceed COVID. So, yeah, I think it's an issue, but I still think we're not taking cars away from people or alcohol. I mean, in fact, some states have considered bars and liquor stores essential, and more people are dying from that from COVID. But the other thing I want to bring up too is we all read things, we all hear things, and one of the things I want to make everybody aware, because I've been asked, what is our representative doing? Heath Flora is writing bills. He's trying to get the state to not yank business licenses during a pandemic unless they violate some other part of the license. Whether he's going to be successful, I don't know, but he's not out there telling people about it. And I told him last Sunday, he needs to get out there and start telling people what he's doing, because people don't know what he's trying to get done. And it looks like he's doing nothing. He's working very hard. The problem is because of the shutdown, Jason's not around. His marketing guy, if you will, is not around telling people what he's doing. So I want to make everybody aware that's attacking. He's out there trying to do the best he can. I want to thank the chamber for being involved in putting on that webinar, whatever you want to call it, last week to inform the businesses. The other thing I would encourage people in the public to do is to obtain facts before they start, I don't know a better word than spewing information out there that's not right, inaccurate, have no facts, have not called anybody to get the facts, have not done their own research, just getting people riled up about stuff that's wrong. Like our cops are giving tickets from people out of town that are in one of our businesses, or we're shutting businesses down. both absolutely false, but it's out there in public and it's just irritating me to no end. The other thing I want to say is that I've been doing this a long time, and I look up and down the state, and I'm got to just taking a lot of time. This council has been one of the most business-friendly councils I've had the pleasure of working with. That when we had these meetings and we made these decisions, this council made some very good decisions. Probably not in, I shouldn't say it, probably not in complete compliance with the county and state orders, but within their orders. But we took some very pro-business efforts to try to help businesses. Regardless of what you're hearing out there and reading out there, this council has done that. And I'm very proud that they've done that. Staff, chief, Kevin, council have worked very, very hard to try to be able to open businesses in the way that we can, because we're mandated by the state. Everybody thinks that we can just do what we want in Ripon. Boy, that'd be nice. We get mandates that I hate, but we got to follow them, because otherwise we've got some implications. So we get in these mandates and we're trying to do our work, not a workaround, we're trying to work within that, but to be business friendly, to allow our business to open, because we're as irritated as everyone else about all this that's happening. But I want to thank the council and staff, because I'll tell you, you guys took one of the most proactive business stances that anybody in this entire state has taken so far. So I just want the public to know that. Please do your homework before you start spewing information out there that's not accurate.
Councilman Euchre?
Well, Mike took my whole speech, so I'll pass.
Vice Mayor DeGraff?
Yeah, Mike, I think, took the words out of all of our mouths tonight, but I'm just going to reiterate a few points that I make every council meeting, is to thank the members of the public for their input. We can't make the decisions that we make without their input. So I know a lot of people who are upset, a lot of people who want us to do things that we can't do. And there's a lot of information out there, as Mike said, that is either not true and just some people that could do themselves and do us all a favor if they inform themselves a little bit better. We are all very attempt to be open and transparent, very welcoming to your feedback and your comments and the members of the public. So just as always, reiterate, we want to hear from you. So with that, I'm done. Thank you.
So just 2 points to build off of what Councilmember Susha said. So the efforts that we've taken have been very highly received by the business community, not just the chamber, but all of the businesses, as an effort above and beyond what we could have done in order to help them reopen. I mean, everybody up here recognizes the fact that it's people's livelihoods at stake. And we want to make sure that we are working as quickly as we can, so that way they can reopen, and giving them a framework within which they can operate. Second, I want to point out that this council, since the time I've been on here, has done a fantastic job at budgeting. A fantastic job. So when pandemics and disasters like this happen, we have the ability to absorb it without having to go through and do mass layoffs. We are not some of our other local communities that run it so close to the red line where they're robbing Peter to pay Paul. So I think that really is a testament not just to the council, but also to the staff to be very, very mindful of those situations and to not get out over their skis and ask for the moon. So they do the best job that they can. They make sure that their departments are continually improving, but they put together a very, very reasonable and achievable plan for us to do that. And so I just want to thank them for that. And with that, we will go ahead and close this Ripon City Council meeting. And we will open the Redevelopment Successor Agency. Lisa?
Director Leo Zuber. Mike Restusha. Dean Euchre.
Here.
Vice Chairman Daniel DeGraff.
I am here.
Chairman Jake Parks.
Present.
And Chairman Parks, if it's okay with you, we'll just do it manually.
Yeah, that's fine.
Perfect.
Yep. Approval of the minutes. So we've got a move, we've got a second. We'll do a voice vote. All right. So all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing none. All right, discussion items, refinancing RDA bonds.
Yeah, we have Marshall Lynn available by Zoom, I believe.
Yes, that's true, Kevin.
Oh, there you are. So I don't know if a lot of you remember Marshall, but he's been around for years, maybe decades, helping the city with different bond transactions over the years, and has been extremely helpful. He has approached me with the idea of the option of refinancing the redevelopment bonds that we talked about earlier for some obviously substantial savings that could either go to the general fund or as wherever the council so chose. It would be in your discretion to choose how you wanted to use those funds. So with that, Marshall, I'll turn it over to you.
Fine. Thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you so much for inviting me into the council chamber. And it's nice to see some of the faces that have been on the council or actually on the board now for years and years and years. And a special shout out to Dean and to Mike. Nice to see you. And both of you guys don't ever age, do you?
No, Mike's the gray-haired one down there.
Well, I think that the topic that we're talking about is very, very, very appropriate, and that interest rates, as we know, have been dropping significantly over the last year or so. And literally, cities and counties and states have gone ahead, taken their own debt and issued new debt, would have saved, literally saved all of the taxpayers across this nation billions and billions of dollars. The Successor Agency Board will note that the RDA, and by the way, to give you a tiny bit of background, I've been engaged by the city since the 1990s, and I've worked on all of your plan amendments and have done and served as the FA in all of your tax allocation bonds. And I also have on with me today Mr. Ralph Holmes. Ralph will be the underwriter if the agency board wants to move ahead. Ralph also worked as the banker on all of the three issues that we are talking about. The agency board will note that we issued bonds in 2003, issued bonds in 2005, and issued bonds in 2007. And to give a little bit of background, that when the former RDAs, as the former RDA issues bonds and goes ahead and refunds those bonds, all the taxing agencies within the boundaries of the redevelopment project area share in that savings. And one of the things that we've done, we paid particular attention because in the city of, in your city, and the fact is that over the next few years that you'll probably be short quite a few dollars, and we have literally pushed the savings forward to the maximum extent possible to get you the greatest amount of savings in the first years of the refundings. We're estimating right now, since the city's share of the 1% tax is at 12.40, the city will save approximately $751,000. And this is subject to change because rates will go up or they may go down over the next couple months. And as this process literally is a very, this process will probably take a good 3 to 5 months to get through it. I think of equal importance, given the actions of the state of California announcing that the school districts are going to take huge hits. The Ripon School District will receive about $3.25 million more. So that's going to be a phenomenal benefit, which I think benefits everybody within the city. The question came up a number of weeks ago, and Kevin called me and asked if we were going to extend out the terms of the bonds. And the answer is no. The 2000 bonds are due in 2032. They'll be paid off. 2005s are due in 35, and the 2007s are due in 36. But we will not be extending out any of the terms at all. To give you a little bit of a flavor, and again, subject to where the market will be, the 2003 bonds were issued with a net interest cost of 4.66. Again, the current estimate, I want to underline the term estimate for the 2000 for the bonds, for the 2020 bonds will be 2.44. The 2.5 bond, pardon me, 2005 bonds currently have an NIC 4.67, and our current estimate of NIC will be 2.74. And finally, the NIC for the 2007 bonds is 4.66, and we're estimating that issue will go out about 2.86. Again, very, very, very preliminary. Any type of bond financing takes a number of team members. What we've done, I went forward to Kevin, and I have put together, I think, the best team that we could possibly do. And I've also stated to everybody, want everybody to cut their fees down if we want to maximize the savings to the city. So for the underwriter, we are recommending Piper. And Ralph, I think his mug is up there on the screen. Is that you with a beard now, Ralph? Oh my goodness gracious. For bond counsel, Nixon and Buddy, financial advisor, the Bayshore Company, which is us, and for the fiscal advisor, HDL, who are well known within the state of California. And again, the city hopefully will get right around $750,000 savings, and we push those savings the first year on 142,000, second year 178, third year 70, and fourth year 179, and so forth down to the end. Now we could increase the savings if the agency board wanted us to even out the debt service, but I thought it was important given the fact that due to COVID, that the city, since these funds will flow back to the city, they would probably want to have available the maximum amount of funds possible. So Kevin, I took your 5 minutes and I think I went to 7. I apologize. So one other thing too, in question about your water bonds, I'll go ahead and look at those and get you an answer in that with the next day or so. So if any questions of the agency board, I'm more than pleased to answer them. And Ralph Holmes is also with me to answer any questions. Hi, Marshall. Mike Rastusha. How are you? I haven't talked to you for a long time. Mike, it's been a long, long time. Every time I come over there to City Hall, I can't find you. I am hiding. You're hiding. So I've just got a couple of questions, and I know you answered one in an email back to Kevin. First, I have a question though that I still don't. How do you not? How come it's not a consistent savings? How do you upload the savings? I don't, because normally when you refinance, let's say a debt, you lower a payment, you save so much each year, but you upload, how do you front load all the savings on this thing? Ralph, go ahead and jump in on this. Ralph, can you hear me? He's looking up the answer.
Yeah. So we've got the opportunity because of that we sell bonds in each maturity. And so what we'll have the option to do is just to have bonds mature in later maturities. We'll still not have less savings, or we won't have this savings in a year, but we basically take the savings up front. And the idea is to assist both the city as well as the other taxing entities that may have shortfalls in the coming years.
So do our payments change then?
Yes. Yeah. So our payments would, what would happen is you would have lower debt service than you do now for the next 5-6 years. And then you'd have payments that are similar to what you pay now. It's a little bit less than what you pay now.
I get it. So that's how you do. You're paying less now, but you're paying more later. Right.
Yeah. But remember that we're not paying more than we already are ever.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, okay, I get it now how you did that. So it's not a stabilized amortization. It's kind of a modified amortization. That is right. That is right. So I get that. Then I also asked Kevin, and I know that I saw an email from you, Marshall, about what happens if we keep the payment the same. We only cut 3 years off the maturity. That is correct. So I get that. So, but the other question I have is that if we refinance, because I don't have the stuff in front of me and I apologize, but there was some different interest rates. So if we go out 10 years on this one, it's 2.4%. I understand these are, today's rates, not tomorrow, next week or something, but 2.4 and 2.74 and some other rates. If we amortized everything down to the lower maturity and dropped everything, let's say the top rate of 2.74 for the one that goes out 10 years, and dropped that amortization down to 6 years and got 2.4%, and I don't have the stuff in front of me, so I apologize for that. We'd still have a tremendous savings, wouldn't we? Or would the cash flow be negatively impacted because we're shortening it up, but yet the rate, actually the interest we're paying would be less. That makes sense?
Yes. Ralph? Mike, the answer to your question is yes, sir, and so on. Again, the overall goal that we had was to literally push the savings up front to guide to allow you folks to have maximum amount of dollars flowing in and so on. But the savings itself would change. If you wanted to take savings on a equal basis, your savings are going to go up a little bit. If you wanted to go ahead and shorten the term of the bond issue, your savings would go up, but you would not get any of those savings until year 2031, which really doesn't make much in a way of sense. Given the current environment, particularly with COVID, my feeling is that, and again, up to the agency board, if you folks feel you want to change, that's fine. Strongly advise you take my savings and use those monies for the operations of this.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I was just asking the question so that I know in my mind what I'm, if you drop the interest rate from, 2.75 down to 2.4, and you lower the amortization on some of those ones that we talked about going further out, maybe the savings doesn't make sense. There'll be a little savings, maybe not much.
We could run that, but if honest to, we can do a evaluation on it. I don't think it's going to change an awful lot.
My feeling is we're going to need the money now. We're not going to need it 5 years from now. And if it means we sacrifice a little now or overall to get the money now, it's fine with me, because it's not our money. It's tax money. And once this is gone, then the taxes get distributed the way they're supposed to be. So I think the plan as presented is fine.
I completely agree. What I don't know is when you take the rate from 2.74 down to 2.4 and you knock 3 years off the amortization, it may be the same. From a cash flow standpoint, I don't know.
Yeah, there's gonna be some tipping point where.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking. I don't know what it is.
Kevin, do you have any other comments? Anything?
I think we need to proceed with this.
Oh, I agree.
And if they want to bring two scenarios back, that's fine.
You bring both options, the best.
Yeah.
Let's look at it and see. We may not want to do it, but it'd be nice to know what we're not.
Right.
To know what options we have.
I don't have a problem with that.
Pick the best option.
Okay.
But yeah, this, to me, I hate the term no-brainer, but it's no.
Right. So then we'll have.
And the recommended action for tonight is to direct staff to proceed to work with Marshall on the bond issuance and do what we need to do to move that forward. And then also approve and authorize the mayor to sign the engagement letters for the various firms that are on Marshall's team.
Yeah, I agree.
Right, that's
Need a
fine.
motion?
Is it?
So moved.
Second.
We've got a motion. We've got a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. And with
Thank you,
that,
gentlemen.
we will adjourn the.
Thanks, Marshall. Appreciate it.
Redevelopment Successor Agency.